Shanghai GDG is a very interesting developer community.
I'm glad somebody has asked this question.
This is where the magic happens.
This is primarily a question and answer show. So if any of you out there would like to ask questions.
Well, welcome everybody. Kind of a fun day, a special day for the Chrome Apps Hangout today. We have many of our Chrome folks here in Mountain View with us. To my right, we've got Paul Kinlan.
Hello.
Paul wasn't with us last week, but is going to be joining us regularly.
No,
Paul?
I was on vacation, so
Yeah.
had a nice time off.
Well,
Relaxed in the British sun.
ooh, the British sun. Is that different than the, Brazilian sun or the American sun or something?
It's a little bit better.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Paul Kinlan. I'm a developer advocate at Google, working on Chrome apps and also web intents. I have to keep saying this every single time I do a presentation.
I thought you weren't allowed to say web intents anymore, though.
Oh yeah, it's Snetsyboo, isn't it?
Yes.
I can only say Snetsyboo, which is web intents backwards. But anyway, I'm Paul Kinlan. I'm a developer advocate at Google. I'm just here in Mountain View for the week.
Awesome.
I thought I'd come and say hello to all you guys and let's talk about some Chrome apps things.
Cool. Awesome. And we also have Renato.
I'm a developer program engineer for Chrome apps, and this is the second session I participate, and hopefully we'll have several others.
Yeah.
Many other APIs.
Apparently I'm just here for the banter, which when I was asked to come along for this, I was like, why am I going to be a Star Wars character, one of those big woolly mammoths? And then I realised I'm here for the funny conversation.
Yes, well, there's that too. Yeah.
I have been preparing that joke all week.
Thanks very much. We'll be here next week too. We also have Paul Lewis joining us. Paul, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi from London. I'm Paul Lewis, a developer programs engineer, also on the Chrome team, Chrome apps, and I also look at GPU and performance stuff as well, but primarily today, Chrome apps.
Sweet. So, and I'm Pete LePage. I'm a developer advocate on the Chrome team, working on Chrome apps and Chrome mobile and all sorts of really cool Chrome stuff. We've got a pretty exciting show this week. Last week we sort of gave you the introduction to Chrome apps. We talked about, hey, what are they? How do they work? We showed you some samples. We showed you some cool stuff and how you can get started. This week we're going to dive into some of the recent changes, as well as we're going to build sort of the Hello World and take it into a little bit of a Hello Galaxy kind of sample and show you some of the things that are available with the windowing API. Gotta refer back to your Wookiee joke. Well, I guess it wasn't a Wookiee joke, but Banta joke.
I was looking at Wikipedia today.
There you
just to
go.
make sure.
All right.
I just realised as well, looking at the camera as well, I'm the only one who's colour coordinated. I have the blue Chrome logo as my T-shirt.
All right. Well, I've got the blue Chrome logo.
Yeah,
I've got a stripe.
I'm gutted.
Okay.
Sorry,
fine.
guys.
Next time, I'll try better. All right. So with that, why don't we pass it over to Renato, who's going to talk about some of the recent changes this week.
Yeah, this week we had a breaking change on the way you launch a new window. And previously you launched a window using the Chrome experimental app API. And this is, as it says in the name, it's experimental, and after we had a few weeks of feedback from you, we transformed this API to app runtime API, and it's not experimental anymore, so you should not expect that many changes on this API particularly.
So that's a really good point, right? It's many of these APIs right now are under the experimental, which means they're going to change.
Yeah.
And so when they're going to change, you just sort of have to be a little bit aware of that. And at some point, they'll come out of that experimental state, right?
Exactly.
And what does it mean when they come out of that experimental state?
It kind of means they're relatively set in stone. Obviously, nothing's completely set in stone, but the general idea is that we're pretty happy with this API. We've got a whole lot of developer feedback, and we're pretty confident that it's not going to change that much. So it's like a little bit more confidence that it's going to be stable for the for the foreseeable future, or the near foreseeable future at least.
Sweet, cool.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we also have, talking about window, we also have a new feature. It's not a breaking change, but it's really cool indeed, where you can specify that your window is chromeless. Chromeless means has no title bar, and you have control of all the UI of your application. For this specifically, this is still being developed. So
So if it's under development, it's probably under the experimental
exactly.
API. All right.
Exactly.
So we need to remember that. It may change. And we want your feedback. If it's under experimental, we want to hear from you, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Please, in this for all the APIs, specifically for experimental APIs, please go to the Chromium Apps forum. We are there. We are answering questions there, and we really want to hear your feedback. For this frameless window, what it means to be frameless? It means basically for comparing to the actual framed window, we have a title bar and we have close buttons and minimize buttons. For the frameless windows, it's just a window where you can draw on any part of it. It brings a problem because you need a part of your window to be draggable, and you also need a close button. And we all are working on the. We are also working on the on this, specifically on the draggable and on the default title bar. But for now, you can already create a frameless windows on some platforms, and Paul Lewis will show you an example of that. Paul?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So, Paul, why don't you start off with a little bit of a hello world? So.
Actually, before I do that, I'm going to dive in and just quickly show you this frameless window, which I've got open here. So this is on the Chrome app samples GitHub repo, so you can get the source code for this right now.
All right, so that's on the GitHub repo, which we've got a URL for that, which we'll show in a sec. But
and you can see that the window that it's launched has nothing other than the content. So it's exactly as Renato said. We haven't got any close buttons. We haven't got anything else. And if I check this box over here, it introduces a title bar, which means I can now drag this around. I can't drag using anything else. We have top and bottom. And
now, are those customizable?
Yeah, I believe they're completely within the developer's control as to what they want to put there.
Very cool.
Yeah, total control over how your window looks, and then a close button as well. So that's a quick look at that.
They look kind of like the widgets, don't they? Do you know the note, like the little notepad widgets with like stickies and all that type of stuff?
Yep.
It's kind of cool. Things that you could do with that is pretty cool, I think.
Cool. So what I'm going to do is I was just going to go through the process of creating Hello World.
Awesome.
And so you guys hopefully can see what I've got on my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through creating, as I say, this Hello World app. I just talk through the various parts of it. Guys, if you've got any questions as I'm going, just feel free to shout. So the first thing we need is a manifest, which basically tells Chrome about the app. So that's a JSON file. So we'll start out with that, and we will call it manifest JSON. We'll need a T on the end of that.
I kind of feel like we should be doing the Muppet thing where we make we're the old guys sitting up in the top of the thing with Muppets and making the crazy comments.
I was going to try
I
and do
think you guys would make fantastic Muppets for what it's worth.
Yeah. I was going to try and do a Fozzie Bear impression.
I should have.
Sorry.
All right, sorry. Paul, why don't you keep going? We'll keep.
Yeah.
We'll be quiet.
Yeah, the Peanut Gallery will now shut up.
I've got so far I've got two properties in. The manifest version is what tells Chrome that this is going to be a packaged app. The version 2, version 1, which is the next property that I've got, it actually says this is the version of the app. So when you if you update that to 1 or 1.1 or something like that, that's what you put there. And the name of the app, so we put that in keys, which is going to be Hello World. And then we talked about this last time. We tell Chrome that we want to run this as an app, and the background script that we want to run is going to be, get this right, it's going to be main.js, and this is the script that runs in the background. It's like the hub of all our app's communication. So it's what's actually going to be responsible for launching the windows. It would be listening for the on-launched event, which is the one that Renato just told you has changed. So this is the manifest, and the next file that we create is going to be this main.js.
Can I just ask a quick question? You said it has to be main.js. Can it be like Pete.js or Fred.js as long as it's, just something.js?
Yeah, you're telling Chrome here, you're telling Chrome what the script is that you want to use as the background script. So yeah, you can call it anything you like. Convention says it might be something like main.
Main, maybe app.js, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Something that, is sort of indicative of the role it's playing, I guess. So, new file.
I'm going to say the really cool thing there as well is you can actually have multiple files in that list.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can break up your application into
cool. Yeah, and because you're not actually pulling files down over the internets, there's no latency or delay or anything. It's just
pretty cool.
Like that. Sweet.
Yeah. So this is actually an array. So it's just an array with a single item in. So the main .js. This is, as I say, this is the hub of the app. This is the thing that Chrome is running in the background. So the first thing we want to do is we want to, and this is on the new namespace, which is the new API, the chrome.app.runtime, and we want to attach a listener to the on-launched event, which is what we want Chrome to do whenever we actually kick off the app. So here we go. I'm going to throw a function in there. That always works. And inside that, we're going to say chrome.app.window, which is one of our new APIs, create. And we want to create, first thing we do is we tell it which HTML file we want it to load. And then we give it an object with a load of properties in which specify things like width. I won't add it to this, but you could, if you wanted to, add the new frame none, which is exactly how you get that frameless window.
Okay.
So if you want to create, a frameless window, you add the frame none property to when you create a window. And
cool.
Let you do that. So now I've got a main.js and a manifest, but the last thing I need at this stage is the index, which is going to be what we actually try and load up.
Now again, you can use any file name you want. You don't have to call it index. You could call it, my main app.html.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, okay. And I'm just making life simple for myself. I'm just going to say hello world. Hello world. So that's it. That's about all you need to actually create a packaged app. So hopefully now if I go over here and I'm in Canary, I've enabled the experimental APIs and all those kinds of things that we talked about last time.
Okay.
And you can see I've got hello world here that I'm going to try and load unpacked, and all being well. It's added itself.
Sweet.
Yay. So now if I go here and I click on this, I get my window with hello world in. Okay? So that's all working. That's exactly as
and it opens the size that you said that you want it to open because you said no frame, or you didn't say no frame. It's still got the normal things, and you can drag it around just like you normally would any other application window, right?
Exactly. Okay. So at this stage, it's like these are sort of almost things that you would expect from a web app. Okay, so that the window is slightly different, but one of the things that you can do, we mentioned before, is the windowing API, which is new controls that you've never had before for handling windows. So I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to go back to my source. I'm going to add in a button, and I'm going to give it something descriptive because I'm helpful like that. And I'm going to make mention of a script. I'm just going to call this app.js. Again, I mean, you don't have to call it.
So why not just put the script in line?
Now we will talk about this. There's. I'm glad you brought it up now, though. There are content security policies. There are restrictions on scripts, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a little bit, which is good. Basically, one of the restrictions right now is that you can't put inline scripts in the page. This is supposed to protect your app from injections and cross-site scripting, those kinds of attacks. So I'm bouncing the script that I need out to this app.js file, which I'll go ahead and make now, app.js. And I'm just going to spit out a little bit of code here, all being well, and immediately invoke function expression. Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to grab my the button from my HTML, and I want to add a click handler. So add event listener click, and when you click it, what I'd like to do is I would like to call chrome.app window, minimize. Now, this is not something you can normally do with a window. You
Right,
can't normally tell the browser, hey, I'd like you to minimize the window. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timeout where I'm going to say, okay, well, let's do this. After about, 4 seconds, chrome.app.window.restore. So not only can you minimize windows, you can restore windows.
Sweet.
So all being well now, if I go back to here and launch this, I should have a minimize button, and if this works, there we go, minimized, and after a few seconds, if the set timer works, there it goes, it's back. The window is
Very nice.
So these kind of capabilities and more you now have available to you through the windowing API, and there are tons of APIs like this, and they're so much fun. And you see how simple that was. That was just 2 lines of code for minimize and restore.
Yep.
So there we go.
Excellent. So there's a whole windowing API set of instructions that folks can go have a look at that allow you to like minimize, maximize, restore. What else is in there?
There's resizing, moving, but we have, there is a sample in the Chrome app sample where one window is set to mimic its sibling.
Oh, cool.
Which is quite interesting. So you can do quite a lot of complex logic with these, where you could have conceivably sort of panel windows, especially with the frameless. So if you're making an app with a main window and you wanted panels to snap to the screen edges and things like that, you could totally aim for that kind of thing with these APIs.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we started to talk about that whole content security policy bit, and it's content security policy. I think it's something that's really interesting and will really help to protect applications from a certain set of vulnerabilities. Paul, do you want to tell us a little bit more about content security policy?
Yeah. So content security policy is quite interesting. I say interesting. Actually, it is interesting. I did have a full head of hair before I started messing with it, and now, it's a bad joke.
Yeah.
Believe me, I have worse off, my friend. I see it.
So content security policy is basically a framework that is designed to mitigate the risks of people injecting kind of code directly into your web page.
Okay.
As you know, with HTML and JavaScript, it's actually pretty easy to, unfortunately, to kind of cross-site script different sites just by injecting malformed HTML into a page or any kind of malformed content into a page. And when you think about the capabilities that these applications have, whether it's access to USB or Bluetooth, all these
they have advanced access. They have things that normal web apps, normal websites don't have access to.
Yeah, exactly right. So, even things like Chrome synchronized storage, for instance, you don't want to basically get people injecting a small piece of JavaScript or HTML inside your application.
Oh, yeah.
And then kind of basically, not saying take over the system, but do things that the user didn't expect on the system from that single application.
Okay.
So content security policy is designed to restrict the types of things that people could do inside your application in the sense of executing arbitrary JavaScript and HTML. So some of the things that we've seen before is, and Paul mentioned it earlier on, was you're not allowed to have any inlined JavaScript inside the page.
Okay.
That's like on-click, so button on-click, for instance, which
so
Paul
if you
didn't
actually
do.
put on-click inside the button.
You can't put the JavaScript inside there. It's pretty easy to kind of hijack that, even if you didn't have content security policy in place.
Okay.
And then likewise, like inline script elements, you can't have them inside the page. They have to be inside a separate artifact that's inside the kind of the Chrome package, for instance. So they're just some of the basic things. The other things as well that you find in kind of Chrome packaged applications, at least as well, that is kind of enforced by the content security policy, is that you can't directly reference external resources.
Oh, okay. So I couldn't necessarily say, "Hey, I want to go grab some fonts from Typekit" or something like that.
The fonts are kind of interesting. I believe not at the moment.
Okay.
But there's the other things as well. Is you can't load like JavaScript from arbitrary sources outside your application.
Okay.
Obviously, you can do cross-domain XML HTTP requests.
Yep.
So we've always had the ability in Chrome apps to be able to specify a whitelisted set of sites, for instance, that your application can XML HTTP request to, and then you can bring the content in, but it has to be brought in and maintained and kind of locally stored inside your application.
Okay.
This is why we were talking about last time, and I think it's worth saying again that it's offline first, and you really do need to think about those terms. Exactly
right. I mean, one of the things that you find as well is that images, for instance, you're not really supposed to reference images that are normally kind of structural, for instance, remotely. So what we're trying to do is get developers to make sure that their applications, all the images that they need, are referenced locally. This introduces kind of some complexities. You might have to download the image, store it locally inside the application's local file system API or the local file system sandbox, and then reference from there. And we've got actually some great examples.
Okay.
So there is one, like a newsreader application, which basically fetches data from the Google News RSS feeds.
Yep.
But it stores all the RSS feeds in local storage, and it kind of does an XML HTTP request to go out, brings it into local storage, and then that makes sure that the actual content from the from that you've requested is available regardless of whether you're online or not. It's pretty interesting how you're going to get around this at the moment. But it's there primarily as a protection thing.
Okay.
Secondary as well is to make sure these applications work offline. There are two exceptions, video and audio, where you might want to stream the audio in off the web if you're doing like a streaming-based audio player.
Yep.
You might want to bring that in off the web and kind of just have access to that.
Okay.
Interestingly as well, on our GitHub account, we've also got a demonstration that does that. So basically,
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it goes out and you can stream video from, say, your local network.
Yeah.
Into your
And
application.
those are on the Chrome app samples in GitHub, right?
It's a separate repository under Google Chrome.
Okay.
The GitHub user account. It's called, I believe it's called Video Player.
Okay.
We can share the link later as well.
Okay.
But essentially, yeah, you can go off, connect to your kind of remote networks, your home network, stream the video in, and then just kind of say, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save this for later, bring it in, store it in your local file system API, and then play it back offline.
Okay.
So that's interesting. There's two other little bits as well. You're not allowed to do dynamic code execution as well in CSP.
Okay.
So that basically removes the, eval, essentially. We all know
evil.
Which does cause some issues in the sense of a lot of templating libraries have been built to basically build up a function dynamically based off the template structure and then execute it as you kind of build the template out. There are workarounds for it. You can either pre-compile the templates, so things like handlebars, for instance.
Perfect. Okay.
You can use handlebars, pre-compile a template. I mean, there's not a lot of people who actually dynamically compile templates on the fly anyway.
Okay.
It's a convenience thing normally.
Yeah.
But essentially what you'll try and do is you will just compile it and include it inside your application, and it works absolutely fine, works brilliantly. And then there's other template frameworks, like things like Angular. Sorry, it's not a template framework, but Angular has got the ability to build these templates on the fly because it's more of a DOM-based structure anyway.
Okay.
So it doesn't go off and execute a new function, it can just do it.
It just does it.
Yeah, it does. It builds the structure of the DOM up automatically.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So CSP does introduce this restriction. We think it's a good restriction for users. It's a little bit awkward for developers in the fact that you have to maybe retool a little bit, but it's not too hard to get around.
It sounds like there's going to be some rethinking in terms of there were things we were used to do that could sometimes allow cross-site scripting vulnerabilities or security vulnerabilities, and now these things put us into a more strict way of writing our code, but will also help us to make sure that we write better code.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's important, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to write better code every day. I want to make sure that I'm not exposing my users to, oops, sorry, lost some information for you.
Yeah.
Oops.
If you look on the developers.chrome, is it developer.chrome or developers.chrome.com/apps? We actually include a list of frameworks we know to work with CSP and kind of workarounds as well. The interesting thing, if you're building a backbone-based application, the default template library doesn't work, which is the underscore template library, because it builds a function up at runtime and then executes that.
Okay.
And we
just use
talking about the documentation. We are also working on that page specifically, and we will show some samples of the most important or the most used frameworks and how to use it on packaged apps. So soon, in a few weeks, we will have a more complete page with more samples.
I mean, and this goes out to the audience as well, is if you're building applications and testing applications today and you find that one of your templating libraries or maybe a framework doesn't work, please let us know. Just go on the Chromium Apps Google group. Email any of us directly. I'm Paul Kinnan at Google or my Google Plus page. We'll feed that back to the team and try and make those things work.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear about the things that you're using, the things that you're running into.
Yeah, because it shouldn't be hard to build these applications, and we find it's not. It's just a little bit of a mind shift to get these frameworks working.
And I think Mike West on our team has written a really great article on content security policy that's up on HTML5 Rocks. You can go check that out. It's a great content security policy sort of primer and how to Really great article. It
Yeah.
helped a lot for me.
Yeah, there's one specific situation on Chrome packaged apps is that you cannot relax the CSP rules.
Yeah.
Right.
Paul? So on extensions and on websites, you can say you can whitelist domains, you can whitelist specific script source or image source. In Chrome packaged apps, they are not.
It's basically set to the local package. Everything is pretty much set to the local
Yes.
package.
It's very important.
So yeah, if you store an image in the file system API, you can directly reference it like a normal image link. It's fine. It's just you've got to try and get that image into your application as well, whether that's zipping it up or downloading it and storing it later.
Yeah.
So
It's cool.
Now, Renato, when we were talking earlier, you talked about some of the things that beyond CSP that have changed. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and some of the things that
absolutely.
developers should know about?
Yeah, I will walk through some of the features, talking about the mindset change that Paul mentioned. There are a few things that doesn't make sense on the context of an app, and there are a few things that, for security reasons, like CSP, were disabled on purpose. So you have the list of all these disabled web features on our documentation website. We will show you the link in a few seconds, right? Am I right about the link?
I think I got it in yesterday. I think I made it, but
Okay.
if it's not, we'll just put it in the notes after the fact.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. I grouped those web features by the reason they are disabled, so I will just walk through them and explain quickly. The first group is we have a different workflow on an app that makes sense on an app and doesn't make sense on the web, on the open web. And these disabled features, are for this group of is form submission. It doesn't make sense to submit a form to an external server for obvious reasons, because you can do that. You can use a JavaScript to grab the submit event and then use Ajax, use XML HTTP request to submit that asynchronously. You cannot use the APIs. You feel free to interrupt me. Okay.
Anything?
Well, all right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you had a fun flight yesterday.
The APIs for to change the browser Chrome, the visual aspects of the browser that are available on extensions are not available on the app for obvious reasons also. We also have some limits on the navigation object. If you open a link, the link will open on a browser, not on your web application. This is very important because you don't want the user to be disrupted by clicking on links and get out of your application.
And does this include links internally as well, like internal to the app?
No, it doesn't. Actually,
The window will never change, but I'm presuming you have to manage and set the click and then.
Yeah, this is a very important stuff. We are working to create samples because most of the frameworks that manage the navigation process depends on the link.
Yep.
And so we will have when I mentioned this change on the framework list of frameworks, we also have code for some of the frameworks that depend on that and how this can be.
So like
changed.
how to do the hijacks.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay.
Exactly. And the cookie.
Cookies? Cookie!
Where? It's not lunchtime yet.
Darn.
The document cookie, cookies doesn't make sense in a client-only environment. Cookies are basically to send information to the server, and if you're using a server to generate content for your client. So also you can use OAuth and other stuff to circumvent that. Regarding safety and CSP, we disabled Flash. We disabled the inline JavaScript and non-sandboxed plugins. Plugins can.
So that's we can still run native client code, right?
Pardon me?
We can still run native client code.
Yeah, we can run Neko. We absolutely can run Neko. I think we have samples for that also.
Okay.
And the games we showed on the Google I/O, they use Neko. It's pretty amazing. We also cannot show external resource. We talked about that before. And for this synchronous nature of some of the web features, we have disabled them because it stops the flow of the JavaScript execution. And those are the modal dialogues like alert, confirm, the local storage, and the synchronous Ajax, the XML HTTP request.
So can you go into local storage a little bit more and tell us why, things that you might have to do?
You should, if you're using local storage, you should use the indexed.db, change your code to indexed.db because it's asynchronous and it allows storing blobs and storing objects. You don't have to change all your code to.
But there's also Chrome Sync, which is I think where you were getting
absolutely,
which is cool.
I mean, it's relatively like the local storage API. It's key value pair based, but the idea behind it is it tries to be asynchronous. I mean, one of the guiding principles.
Well, there's two of them. There's Chrome.storage.local and Chrome.storage.sync.
Actually, that's a good point. So local is like entirely local to the application, and the synchronized one.
And so if I think of Chrome.storage.local, that's almost identical to local storage in that everything sits on my one computer, one machine, doesn't go anywhere. It's asynchronous versus synchronous.
And it allows non-strings.
So I can put true objects in it. So then with Chrome.storage.sync, now this is the one that I kind of go, this is kind of cool.
Yeah. So the Chrome.storage.sync will allow you to basically say, well, I've got my app installed on 3 different machines. How do I get the settings between those, for instance? And it just uses the synchronization framework built into Chrome already to make sure that those settings and the data is replicated across. And then there are a couple of events like that tell you when data's arrived and all this type of stuff as well. So it's pretty cool. It's relatively limited in the amount of data that you can store in it and the amount of operations that you can do. So kind of right now that we're basically trying to say if you've got local application settings, for instance, that's what you'll store in the Chrome synchronized storage, because that's one of the things that everyone hates about kind of being on multiple machines is that not always this data, like your basic configuration is not replicated across the machines.
That's one of the things I love about Chrome is that I go to one computer to another computer and everything is just all shared.
And that means you don't have to, you as a developer, you don't have to build the infrastructure for synchronization.
And it's all there for you.
Now, could I put like gigabytes worth of data into Chrome Sync?
No, I think it's limited to a couple of 100 kilobytes, I think.
Okay, so I couldn't actually go and put like
all your movies.
All my movies. But
the documentation does list the quotas. So there's the limit on the number of items, the item size, and the number of requests that you can make. So make sure to check out the documentation. List those.
That's an important thing to just sort of keep in mind, that you can't put everything in there. It's not like a big dump truck that you can just shove everything in. The internet is a bunch of tubes.
Yeah. So can I just actually preempt one of the questions that we've got on the
in fact, you know what?
It's kind of relevant to this.
Sure.
We had one of a question quite early on in the moderator queue, which basically said, how do you migrate your local storage settings from your Chrome apps to synchronized storage?
Good question.
It has to be a manual task, right? I say manual, it's like a developer manual task.
Okay.
You'd have to have a step inside your application, which basically says, migrate all these local storage key value pairs into Chrome.
Will that work though? Because you don't have from within the app, you don't have access to local storage.
So this is actually a really good point, right? So you might, but you got to remember is that these apps aren't yet available on kind of the Chrome Web Store.
Okay.
So if you're going to do it now with your packaged app or extension, and you've got them stored in local storage, and you're not, I think Manifest version 2 is fine for these. You might want to kind of start to think about migrating your application data across to synchronized storage right now.
Okay, so if you've got a packaged app with a Manifest version 1 today, you have access to local storage, and you have access to Chrome synced storage. Yeah. So you should move it there. So that way, when you ship your Manifest version 2, your new Chrome or your updated Chrome packaged app, it now has access to this.
That's the theory.
Cool. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And if you didn't see my hands, I kind of went like here to here, and then from here to here.
Or we could just say the word synchronize, and then you'd be fine.
That would work too. Well, so on that note, I want to remind folks of the survey that we're asking folks to go and do. That survey is, what Chrome APIs are you most interested in? What are the things you want us to talk about? We're going to plan our next couple of Hangouts based on the feedback we get from you. We want to dive into some of these APIs today. We talked a little bit about the Chrome API, or the windowing API, but there's the USB, there's Bluetooth, there's serial, there's networking, there's all sorts of cool APIs. Tell us which ones you're most interested in so that we can try and really focus on the ones you're most interested in first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that, we've got about 6 minutes left. So let's go to the moderator and take a couple other questions.
Yep.
So yeah, it's changed quite a bit actually since we've started this.
All right.
So should we start with the first one?
Yeah. The first one is from Tim. And he asks, for enterprise, some companies dislike auto-updating apps. Will it be possible to embed a version of Chrome inside your Chrome app?
I think the answer, yeah, that's a good question.
I think the answer currently is no.
But I think there are device policies.
There are some enterprise policies that, as an enterprise, you can say, I do not want Chrome to auto-update. That I want to manage the rollout of Chrome in my organization. So once you do that, you should be able to control how that comes out.
But I'm curious if the question is, I want the
like
Chrome,
apps?
Whole Chrome runtime on the computer runs a specific version, or if the Chrome apps runs a different.
Yeah,
it's like you don't want your apps. It's like you don't want Chrome to update, and then if you don't want Chrome to update, you've probably got a very restrictive policy about apps updating as well.
Yeah.
I think as well, you might be able to control the update policy.
I believe
for apps
you may be able to do that if you're using Google Apps dashboard and you're installing your apps through there. I believe you're right.
Yeah,
you can.
But I mean, if it's a public app that you found on the kind of the public web store, essentially, I don't believe you have any ability to control that at the moment. I don't know. It's feedback that we get, and I've heard quite a few times.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go to the next. It's from Russell. Apps and extensions are very exciting, have very exciting features, bringing new possibilities and being able to personalize Chrome. When using Chrome for Android, however, it doesn't work. Are they going to be added? When can we write an app for my phone? We had the same question last week, right?
Yeah, Paul, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to say, Sundar talks about this at I/O. That's right? And we said the plan is that we do want to bring all these apps to mobile, to all platforms. Really, it's about what we're trying to do at the moment is get the desktop story correct and make sure that we're consistent there, and we sort of iron out any kinks. And then we don't have a date or a time or anything, but we just we will, as I say, we do plan to roll it out. It's just about getting that right on desktop first.
Yeah.
Okay. Jarek had sent a lot of good questions last week, and this week he also has a very good question. We will take the chance that Paul Killen is here, and we'll be able to answer this.
Is this the open with question?
Yes.
Is this a Snitsy Boo question?
It might be.
Let's say that I have implemented Simple Text Editor as packaged Chrome app. Is there any way to expose this app in Open with context menu, which shows up when user right-clicks on TXT files in File Manager?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the answer is yes. Next.
No, it's not quite there just yet. I mean, the intention, to excuse the pun, was to have your application. Thank you. We need sound effects for. The intention was to basically say, the web intent has got a view intent. The user intends to view some content essentially. They don't particularly intend to edit it or do some of the stuff. They just want to view it. And whilst we don't have it in the platform just yet, with the ability to say, look, I want to be in the open with for text files. That was the goal that I had quite early on with this whole thing. Was we've got the ability to say, I need to view text files, I need to view images, and I need to view videos and all this type of stuff. Therefore, you should be able to use the existing web intents functionality to say to the system, I want to be able to view these types. My application can view these types of files. So when the user says, I want to view it, like an image or a video, or your application will be listed there. I think we're a little bit away from that, kind of just getting that in right now. The goal is there to do that, I think. The general idea behind kind of web intents inside these platform apps is it is like the way of, it's like IPC basically for these kind of these web platform type of these kind of apps. So the idea is that you might be able to say, well, I need to do some of the different types of actions, and your applications will be able to talk to each other via intents.
Cool.
So the goal is there. I don't think it's available just yet.
All right. But it's coming.
Well, if you look at Chrome itself, I think the beta channel has got the ability to view RSS feeds inside an application.
Ooh.
So your application can say, I need to view RSS or Atom feeds, and you'll see it today. We've got a couple of extensions. I think WordPress have got an extension, and RSS feed viewer. He's had like 60,000 installs in a week just from this piece of functionality.
Wow.
But the idea behind that is you say, I need to view an RSS feed,
Yep.
open it up and view it inside your application of choice.
So I think we have time for like one more question. So do we want to grab one more?
Yep. Well, actually, there's one here. Can I make a window always on top? By Marco. Right now, no. I believe you can't make a window stay on top at all.
Okay.
It's a good piece of feedback that we should give back to the team, actually.
Yeah. So we'll get that back to the team, but it's always helpful if you guys go and file bugs on Chromium Bugs, because that way not only do we get the feedback to the team and they hear it from us, but everybody else who's watching today can go star that issue and say, yeah, I want that too. Don't have the comment that says, I want that too, but just star it so that the engineering team sits there and goes, oh, wow, this really is a popular thing. So I think that's probably about all the time we have for today. I want to thank these two for being here, and for Paul for joining us from London. We'll be back next week, though everybody's going to be sort of in their home location. I'll be back in New York. You're back in London.
Back here
to
in
Sao
2
Paulo.
weeks' time.
You're in Sao Paulo. So we're going to be coming to you from all over the world.
Before we finish, there's actually about 18 or 19 questions on the moderator. Which
Yep.
We only had 3 at the start of the at the start of this talk.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can just kind of start to answer some of these questions?
Yeah.
Because
Why don't we take a stab at answering some of these questions in the setting responses in the moderator queue?
Okay.
So we'll
That's
take
good.
a stab to give you some answers on some of these. So have a look at the moderator quew for this after the fact. We'll try and get some of the
we've run a little bit late. I mean,
Yeah.
I was doing the banter.
Yeah, that.
I suppose.
All right. Well, with that, guys. Yeah, exactly. Paul's hiding his head. I'm going to hide myself. With that, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next week, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, 5 o'clock in London, somewhere around the world.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see you. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.